Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of the 2020 Honda Goldwing suspension review. This is going to be a little weird. I'm making the video of the video where it left off, and unfortunately my microphone dies halfway through, so I will narrate over the video when we get to that point, but I'm going to start it live now and let it continue on its own and let you watch and play. It's a little softer. I don't know why they would make it. This could be a vendor choice. It's about, it is softer, actually. Yeah, actually I can, now that I'm squishing this one as hard as I can, and I can't really get it to squish. This one I can squish. So it's about 40% softer, at least just in that little amount that I tested there. So interesting. Don't know why they did that. Could just been availability or vendor. This was obviously a conscious decision. This was a definite design change that they made there on the front bumper. This one I would be a little more hard pressed. This could just been vendor or available or tolerance. Let's see. And it does have a different number in the mold here. This one says 04 and this one says 01. Don't know what that means, but they might be actual call outs for the rate of the bumper. No idea. Maybe if somebody works at Show would like to comment on this video below, well, that would be cool. All right, so we have the new rear shock on the dyno 2020. Thermocouple connected. Martin's got it marked as R20. This marked as F20. All right. And I'll let him, as he unloads this, I'll explain to you what he's doing here. So the way the shock works, inside here is a needle going into a seat that's controlling oil flow past the piston. This rod here pushes on that. You can kind of see how it moves. See that? And what's happening is, as this is called a metering rod, you push that in, it's pushing on a needle goes near a seat. So when it's fully open, there's the most flow and the least amount of damping force. When you push it in, it is the maximum amount available for that particular shock. What we're doing is we've made an adapter that we can put on here to just touch this, and then we can screw the adapter on tighter to simulate the stepper motor pushing on the little push rod on the stepper motor pushing on the metering rod. So when you switch your bike between the 4 modes, engine performance modes, it's theoretically changing the damping force, although you can't feel it or notice it on the bike. It's kind of a way over-engineered and non-functioning system. So that stepper motor moves in 0.5 millimeter increments. We did a video on this in the past. It goes, while you have 4 modes, this has 3 positions. So the way it works is the touring mode. Let me get this straight. Tour and eco. All right, so starting in the most open position is rain. Then you cycle through to tour, and it steps up to the middle position. You go to sport, it goes to closed. And when you go to eco, it comes halfway back open. When you come back to rain, then it's all the way open again. So there's only 3 damping settings, even though your bike has 4 engine modes, okay? So that's what's happening. And all we're doing with with our adapter is simulating that setup. So you can come around here and we'll show you this.
So we have first 3 traces on Crescent Green, 118 shock, and then you got the blue
Unfortunately, this is where the audio died, where my microphone died, so I'm going to narrate over. So at this point, we're showing you overlaid dyno traces between the 2018 and the 2020 shock. I have to kind of guess what I said here, but I'll watch the video and sort of retrace. What I'm explaining here is the small gap you see between the two traces actually falls into just tolerance amongst shock absorbers. If you were to test 20 or 30 shocks, you would do what I was just showing you there. They would just draw a whole bunch of traces there. None of them would overlay. They'd all be very close, but that would represent the tolerance range over a batch of shocks. The tolerance appears greater on the rebound side of the graph because the force is 3 times greater than the compression side typically. It's about 3 to 1. In the case of this shock, it's even more, but this just represents manufacturer's tolerance from, could be one tighter piston band, one tighter bore, the whole stack of tolerances. One shock will always make more damping or less damping than another, just depends on the luck of the draw that day. But what they do represent is an acceptable range of damping force that whoever the designer was felt was good for that particular bike. So I think we're going to now switch over from the rear shock to the front shock, and I'll just kind of let this run and I'll narrate along the way. This particular type of dyno is called a Scottish yoke dyno. It's the most common type of dyno used in suspension shops because it's relatively affordable. Something like that is about $15,000 to $20,000. The more advanced types of dynos that give more realistic test data, like more true bump simulation, they can do shapes and things. Those start at between around $50,000 and go on up to the kind of the sky being the limit. So when you set a shock up into the dyno, you'll notice Martin pulled down on it, compressed it slightly. That's because if you fail to have the dyno bottomed out and then pull the shock down off of its top out, the first time the shock cycles down, it'll jerk the shock apart, break your load cell, and destroy a whole bunch of stuff. So very, very important step. So this is the load cell we're looking at, and it crushes in bump force and it gets pulled wider open as the shock cycles in rebound. So this is the front damper here, loaded up, and so Martin at this point is running the traces. So as far as he's concerned here, he wants to stop because once again the 2020 shock is exactly the same as the 2018 shock. But I said, hey, you know what, we've come this far, just go ahead and adjust it so that we can carry the full test all the way to the end of completion. So he's going to take the shock out, and he's going to adjust it to simulate the stepper motor. Having moved to the fully open position, reset it, bring the dyno, bring the mount back down. We lock the shock in place, pull down on the top bar a little bit to make sure nothing's gonna crash. This is the thermocouple he's putting on right now so that we know that the temperatures across the shocks are even, so that the test was as close as we could make it. He's going to repeat the dyno run. Off goes the dyno. It cycles at 10 inches per second, and it will auto load that graph.
And he's just going to pull up the 2018 graph to overlay with it. And there you have it. Same shock. So those two shocks are virtually identical, well, because they are identical. So there you have it. So from what we can tell at this point, the dampers are completely, totally unchanged. There is no change in the way they function or work at all. There is a possibility that the rear bumper was made softer on the shock, although I'm not convinced of that. The front bumper was changed, so one single part that I can guarantee to you was changed was the front bumper. Its function and design now is one that I'm guessing they wanted to make it more durable in some way since it gets pounded on, but that's because the springs are way too soft. The damping is almost non-existent in the range they have it set on the bike, and that's why the bike is so floaty and floppy and pounds away on the bumper. So what I'm telling you here is they said they changed it. Nothing changed other than that little piece of foam inside your front shock. So let me pause this.
It's a little softer.
There we go. So there you have it. That's all I can tell you about the 2020 shocks. If you were holding out to buy a 2020 because you thought the suspension would be upgraded, sorry, nothing changed. Nothing you'll notice. And if anything, in my opinion, that new front bumper that they put on is worse than the old one. So, hey, I'm Max, and sorry you can't see me today. Hey, everybody. Please don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel down there. Feel free to leave comments saying, wow, this is awesome, thanks for showing me this. I'll be back with more cool content on the Honda Goldwing in the very near future. Thanks a lot for watching.